Russia supported the convening of today's Security Council meeting to discuss the current situation in the occupied Palestinian territory. Focusing on the state of affairs in the West Bank. We proceed from the premise that any further erosion of international attention away from the goal of achieving a just and lasting Middle East settlement, the cornerstone of which was and remains the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, is unacceptable. Decades on, this confrontation continues to serve as a primary driver of regional volatility, perpetuating a state of systemic crisis and triggering new flashpoints across the broader Middle East. We thank the UN Deputy Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Ramez Al-Akbarov, and UNICEF Deputy Executive Director Hanan Suleiman for their comprehensive briefings on the situation in the West Bank. We share the alarming assessment presented by the UN representatives. In effect, the West Bank is approaching a point of no return, posing severe risks of deep politico-military destabilization across the entire region. The root causes of this dangerous trend are well known. Israel's creeping expansion in the occupied Palestinian territory, escalating settler violence, and the unprecedented tightening of Israeli restrictions on the movement of Palestinian residents. Contrary to the position of the majority of the international community, West Jerusalem continues its illegal course of constructing new settlements. Just days ago, authorities issued another tender for the construction of over 600 housing units in the Ramallah, El Birei Governorate. Settler violence has reached extreme levels, committed not only with impunity, but at times with the tacit acquiescence of the Israeli military. In late July and early August, a wave of attacks swept across a number of towns, during which extremists set fire to mosques and vandalized homes and vehicles, leaving dozens of people injured. According to open sources, settler violence is setting grim new records. Since the beginning of this year alone, over 11,000 attacks have been carried out, with more than 20 West Bank civilians killed at the hands of Israeli civilians. In parallel, there has been an intensification of Israeli Defense Forces operations aimed at clearing West Bank communities and refugee camps. These military raids are accompanied by arbitrary arrests of Palestinians and sweeping restrictions on movement. Of particular concern is that such measures have effectively placed major Palestinian cities under blockade, leaving even emergency medical services unable to function. We call on Israel to abandon any arbitrary steps, including settlement activity, that undermine the prospects for a two-state solution, to take effective measures to curb settler violence, and to immediately return to complying with the relevant UN Security Council and General Assembly resolutions. Madam President, equally alarming is the explosive situation in another part of the occupied Palestinian territory, the Gaza Strip. The practical implementation of the U.S. peace plan for Gaza is virtually at a standstill. It is, of course, important that mediator efforts succeeded in halting large-scale bloodshed in the enclave. However, the ceasefire regime continues to be systematically violated, primarily by the Israeli side. This is clearly demonstrated by casualty statistics. Less than a year since the formal entry into force of the cessation of hostilities, nearly 1,300 Palestinians have been killed by Israelis. Among them, as UNICEF reports show, were nearly 300 children, meaning that over the past 300 days, one child has been killed every day in Gaza at the hands of the Israeli military. Despite this tragic reality, here within the Security Council, a number of Western delegations over recent months have placed sole responsibility for the stalling of the Gaza peace plan exclusively on Hamas. We all recall how, during Security Council meetings, persistent calls were directed at the leadership of the Palestinian movement to immediately lay down their arms, refrain from obstructing the work of the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, and accept the roadmap of the High Representative of the Peace Council, Nikolai Mladenov. One would hope that our Western colleagues will display that same unity and resolve regarding the other party to the conflict, given West Jerusalem's public rejection of the roadmap and Hamas's acceptance of the deal. Madam President, we have repeatedly noted that the success of any peace initiative for a Middle East settlement will be measured by the achievement of its ultimate goal, the creation of a unified, independent, and contiguous state of Palestine in the West Bank and Gaza, with its capital in East Jerusalem, coexisting in peace and security with Israel. As recent years have demonstrated, the Palestinian question, much like the broader Middle East settlement process, cannot be resolved hastily or through the promotion of ad hoc backroom schemes. Attempts by individual states to monopolize the role of sole mediator are equally untenable, especially when the primary mediator acts exclusively in favor of one party to the Arab-Israeli conflict. Under such conditions, one can hardly expect justice or the fulfillment of the Palestinian people's aspirations. Nevertheless, an alternative path always remains open. Achieving sustainable stability and normalizing the situation in the Middle East can and must be accomplished through coordinated international and regional efforts, anchored in the extensive international legal framework for a settlement, with its core element being the two states for two peoples formula.